Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving right into a piece of source material that, honestly, looks incredibly simple on the surface, but as you'll soon see, it actually hides a highly calculated system of engagement. We're looking at a sensory animation, and we're going to break down exactly how its underlying algorithm works to literally capture and hold focus through pure lexical repetition. It's fascinating.
Now, the precise intent of this material, it's stated right there in the title. Visual stimulation through a dancing fruit sensory animation. It announces its purpose immediately, right out of the gate. This isn't just a cute story. It's a meticulously designed sensory experience. Seeing those dog and apple emojis right next to the promise of visual stimulation tells us that this text is engineered for a very specific cognitive response. It's built to stimulate.
So how does it pull this off? Well, to achieve that stated stimulation, the text relies entirely on a clinical, data-driven structural loop rather than, say, a complex narrative. And think about why this matters for a second. When you're trying to sustain focus, especially in a developing mind, you really don't want complicated plot twists. You want a reliable system. A visual stimulation algorithm, as defined here, uses a repetitive, subtractive text sequence. It basically feeds the brain something totally predictable and then slowly takes pieces away, challenging the viewer to fill in those blanks.
Which brings us to our first major concept, the core character constants.
Right, so before the algorithm can start subtracting anything, it has to build a rock-solid foundation. Every single cycle in this transcript is grounded by three unchanging entities. We've got a farmer, we've got a dog, and we have the identifier bingo, which frequently morphs into that catchy rhythmic namio. No matter how chaotic a spelling sequence gets later on, you're always brought back to these three constants. It's like a psychological safety net. You absolutely always know who the key players are in this environment.
And this brilliantly illustrates the core tension of the data. You've got the static safety of the farmer contrasted directly with the dynamic, decaying spelling of the dog's name. There was a farmer who had a dog. That exact phrase repeats relentlessly. It's our static baseline. But counter to that, we get, and bingo was his nameo, I-N-G-O. So the static baseline comforts us, while the dynamic variable keeps us challenged.
Let's move to our next section, the subtractive spelling algorithm.
Okay, so the entire framework mathematically rests on the number 5. There are 5 letters in the identifier and 5 distinct phases of structural decay. It's a perfectly symmetrical countdown, B-I-N-G-O, 5 units of data. And over the course of the transcript, these 5 units are just methodically dismantled. The transcript systematically drops vocalized letters, which forces the viewer to actively fill in those cognitive gaps. In verse 1, all 5 letters are vocalized. By verse 3, we're down to just 3. And by verse 5, only a single letter is left standing. The trick here is that as the vocalization goes down, your internal participation absolutely has to go up just to maintain the pattern.
Let's track the exact de-evolution as it's written in the source. Notice the highly specific, almost chaotic shifts in capitalization, going from the crisp B-I-N-G-O to the clustered lowercase n-g-o. The source transcript doesn't just neatly drop letters. The formatting itself actually fractures. We start with the fully capitalized, spaced-out B-I-N-G-O. Then, suddenly, a lowercase I appears in step 2, I-N-G-O. By step 3, the spacing breaks down into N-G-O. It's a literal visual decay of the text. The whole structure is just falling apart by design.
Look at these exact phonetic artifacts pulled from the later stages of the text. We see isolated sounds like G and O, replacing the fully structured name. At this point, we aren't even spelling a word anymore. We're experiencing raw, isolated phonetic data. The algorithm has completely stripped away the recognizable identifier, leaving us with these rhythmic, almost primal sounds, right before it dives right back into, and bingo was his nameo.
Now let's look at the bigger picture with the complete lexical loop.
The narrative operates on a very strict timeline, culminating in total omission before it immediately triggers a restart. We go from full spelling in phase 1 through subtractive omission all the way down to phase 3, which is absolute 0. That's the moment all the letters are just gone. And then phase 4 delivers this really fascinating cue, O-O-B-I-N-G-O. It's a vocal windup. It's a clear signal to the brain that the baseline has been reestablished and the loop is firing up all over again.
This really highlights the delicate balance of the whole sensory experience. There's a heavy reliance on repetitive comfort, precisely counterweighted by the cognitive challenge of the missing letters. Think about it. If the entire sequence was just omission, it would be a confusing mess, right? But if it was just the farmer, it would get boring really fast. The transcript actually spends half of its data just re-establishing the "there was a farmer" setup. It literally earns the right to execute the increasingly complex omission sequence that follows.
Now, this quote represents the absolute climax of the subtractive loop. This is where the omission reaches zero, and we are left with nothing but the constant framework. Read that text carefully. The spelling is entirely gone. The space where bingo used to be has been completely swallowed up by the structure. The algorithm has successfully erased the dynamic variable, leaving you, the viewer, to mentally hold the entire weight of the missing data, while the static baseline just plays on.
So ultimately, we're left to wonder which mechanical element of this sensory animation holds the true power of stimulation. Is our attention held because we just love the predictable return of the farmer who had a dog? Or are we captured by the disappearing letters, the void that our brains are biologically wired to try and fill? The next time you encounter a simple, repetitive loop, ask yourself, what exactly is being subtracted here, and what is my mind being forced to construct in its place? Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning the structure of the information around you.